Ladies and gentlemen of the media, good morning. And on behalf of the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the South African National Defense Force, may I take this opportunity to welcome you all in this deliberations between ourselves as the military and yourselves as our fourth estate. It is my pleasure to welcome you. And before we start, I would like to introduce the panelists and the members that are accompanying the Minister. It's obviously Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Nji Motsepe, who is accompanied by the Chief of the South African National Defense Force, General Mapianya. And on the far right, we have the Chief of Joint Operations, Lieutenant General Sangweni, who's in charge of all operations of the South African National Defense Force. On my left, on the left of the Chief, we have the Chief of Staff of the South African National Defense Force, Lieutenant General Michael Ramanswana. I would also like to introduce the senior leadership of the South African National Defense Force, who's sitting at the back. We have the Chief of the South African Army, Lieutenant General Mbata. We have the Chief of HR, Human Resources, Lieutenant General Sichonganye. We have the SAM's head, who is known as the Sergeant General, Lieutenant General Mapaha. We also have the Chief of Logistics, very important, who's responsible for all logistics of the South African National Defense Force, Vice Admiral Mkonto. We also have the Defense Joint Operations HQ, GOC, General Officer Commanding, General Tulare, yes, General Tulare, and we also have the acting CFO, Mr. Abotsi, and obviously we also have the Deputy Head of Communications, Admiral Shabalala. I think I've got everybody else here. Oh, the one, gee, sorry. We have also the Chief of the South African Air Force, Lieutenant General Mbambo, apologies for that. This, colleagues, is the complement, the full complement of the South African National Defense Force, which we call the Military Command. They are all here today, and you will see them as we interact. Without much ado, I would like to invite the Minister of Defense to to opening remarks, then we will take it from there. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Babu Dlamini, Head of our Communication. Let me start off by acknowledging the entire senior leadership led by the Chief of the Defence Force and all the heads and senior of the different arms. Also give my greetings to members of the media that are here, our distinguished guests that have joined us, the other officials from the department that are here, and good morning. Today we really would like to share with you important developments on the withdrawal of the South African Development Community Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which we call the semi-DRC, from the mission areas that they were in East DRC, from Goma and Sake territories. As we are very well aware or know that our defense troops were deployed together with our sister partners from Tanzania and Malawi. These forces have commenced with the withdrawal out of the mission area as reported by the SADC organ leadership. And this announcement follows extensive regional diplomatic engagements, high-level consultations with several role players, and the progress in the peace efforts within the Eastern DRC. Over the past 4 months, the region has witnessed renewed momentum towards peace and stability in the eastern provinces of the DRC, and these political and diplomatic engagements have progressed with great momentum and led to the outcomes of the recent DRC summit of heads of state and government, which was held on the 13th of March 2025. And the outcome of these meetings has led to a decision for the termination of the mission and the withdrawal to allow political and diplomatic interventions to resolve the security situation in the Eastern DRC, involving all states and non-state role players. Furthermore, significant bilateral, multilateral meetings took place between the DRC government and the regional actors, culminating in a peace agreement signed between the government of the DRC and the representatives of M23 movement. And this agreement brokered with the support of South African Development Committee SADC, the African Union and East Africa Community, include commitments to cease hostilities, disarmament, reintegrate former combatants and the protection and protect civilians. So it is on this basis that the Summit DRC, in consultation with troop contributing countries, resolved to initiate a phased withdrawal of its forces, including those of the South African National Defence Force. And the withdrawal of the South African National Defence Force from the Eastern DRC marks a very important new chapter in a regional peacekeeping effort. And this withdrawal is a structured process designed to ensure that safe return of both our troops and our equipment is not compromised. So all logistical support will continue during this phase. I want to take the opportunity to express my deep appreciation to the brave men and women of our South African Defence Force, who serve with honor, with pride, professionalism, and commitment. We under very extremely challenging circumstances. I want to say to them, your contribution has helped to lay the groundwork for peace in the region. And to the families of those who made the ultimate sacrifice, your loss is shared by a very grateful nation with full appreciation. Their memory will forever be etched in the history of our commitment to peace on the African continent. In conclusion, South Africa remains committed to a peaceful state, stable, prosperous, and a prosperous DRC. Our diplomatic developments and humanitarian engagements will continue as we transit as we transit out of the active combat deployment, we reinforce our commitment to African-led solutions and the values of the African Union Agenda 2063. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the counterparts of the Summit DRC, the troops contributing countries, the Ministers of Defense of the United Republic of Tanzania, and the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Malawi for their collective efforts and contributions to this difficult mission where all of us lost soldiers in the battle. Furthermore, I also want to thank all the ministers and heads of states, both from SADC, from East African Community, for their contributions and support in all the efforts to bring peace and stability in the DRC. But I also want to really, with all gratitude and appreciation, express gratitude to our own defense force, the leadership that also had to operate under very difficult conditions and which led us to where we are. So I want to say thank you very much, General, and your team for having worked this hard. And on that note, I really want to invite our General Mapaya to take us through the operational matters regarding our withdrawal without going into details as where we are dealing with a sensitive matter, so that we will just give a general overview. And I think there will be an understanding that because it's work in action, there are other details which may compromise safety if we have to really engage on them now. But we'll give as much as it's safely to give. Thank you. Thank you, General.
Let me also pay my respect to the fallen soldiers that during combat have been so selfless and laid down their lives for the betterment of the lives of others. I would also like to take this opportunity to pay homage and tribute to those that were injured and are currently recovering under the support of our medical health fraternity. As the commander of the National Defense Force, I would like to add just a little bit on what the minister has said, primarily because we always believe that war is continuation of politics by other means. And that had been confirmed by other scholars that were there before us, who understood that war is a mere continuation of policy by other means. And we see, therefore, that war is not merely a political act, but also a real political instrument, a continuation of political commerce, carrying out of the same by other means. And therefore, our withdrawal must be seen in the context that the political effort to have peace and stability in the DRC is now in the horizon, and we can see that there are efforts that are leading towards that as outlined by the minister. We therefore, as part of Summit DRC, as the National Defense Force, started planning on the withdrawal, which came as a result of the decisions that had been outlined by the minister in terms of the summit decision that were taken in Harare. And subsequently, the meeting between SADC and the East African Community that led to the chiefs of the defense forces coming together, agreeing on the blueprint of how we should go about resolving the problem in the Eastern DRC. And eventually we said, with the cessation of hostilities and the ceasefire, that is the ground fertile enough to say we cannot shoot our way through to peace, but let us allow mediation and the continuation of engagement, which is inclusive, to take lead. We therefore indicated that we will support the effort by our political leadership, and both SADC and East African Community agreed that because there had been a military conflict, the chiefs of the defense forces must go and start an engagement with the military element of M23 to ensure that we get a commitment from them that whatever the political leadership is saying is the primary responsibility of SADC and East African Community to say that there is peace. Then there is a commitment from those who are wearing parties, and M23 had to make that commitment. The chiefs of the defense force of the troop contributing countries, that is South Africa, Malawi, Tanzania, accompanied by the director of the organ, went to Goma, met up with the leadership of M23. I was part of that team, and we got that commitment that they will observe the ceasefire and the cessation of hostilities. Again, we said, because we need to uplift our people from Goma, we need to say that Goma International Airport should be opened. So, those are some of the background information that is important to understand that this withdrawal is not an accidental withdrawal, and the withdrawal is not a sign of weakness. Withdrawal is a persuasion of the political effort to see that there is peace and stability in the Eastern DRC, and therefore we are withdrawing with that pride to say there is an element of peace because M23 committed to the cessation of hostilities. DRC had to sign also an undertaking with M23. So we are withdrawing now in a phased manner with our troops going to the assembly area that we have identified, and the assembly area is in Tanzania, and therefore SADC had made an effort to write a note verbal that went to the government of Rwanda to say, because for the troops to go to Tanzania, they will have to pass through the space of Rwanda. It had been negotiated and discussed by SADC leadership that it is a thoroughfare to our assembly area. And from the assembly area, which is in Tanzania, all the forces will go to their respective countries in one way or another. Equipment will be by sea to South Africa. Personnel will be by air. And to Tanzania, from the assembly area to the respective bases, they will use the mode of transport that is suitable for Tanzanians. And that will be Mwendo Yama office. So the Malawans will also decide on the mode, but movement from Goma to the assembly area, which is in Tanzania, will be by road through the territory of Rwanda and into the Republic of Tanzania. What is important is that this movement had already started on the 29th, where we have started with 13 trucks. That is now the advanced team with 57 members that are currently in the forward base at the assembly area, preparing for the rest of the soldiers to come. Today, as we speak, the second batch will be going, and this movement will be concluded by the end of this month. That is the planning as per the force commander, because withdrawal is part of the command initiative. It is part of the plan of the commander. And therefore, the force commander who is appointed for SAMI DRC has this plan outlined. And our members will be back here in South Africa. And the minister had indicated that we will continue to keep the people of South Africa and the media updated with developments each and every step of our movement, because we've got nothing to hide. But I would like to caution that whilst we are doing this withdrawal as part and parcel of an operation, we must guard from having the so-called sources internal in the defense force, because that is detrimental to the security of our people. Whatever information that the media gets, it is best used if you get it from the defense force, because the so-called sources that you have might not give you the correct positions as it prevails. So I would like to urge the media that we are not on the James Bond business. We are in a war fighting business, and therefore security of our people is paramount for all of us, and is paramount for the people of South Africa. We wouldn't like to see our people being harmed because of issues that are raised prematurely or issues that are raised out of context. Minister, I thought I should raise that element, and to all the media and the people of South Africa, we are ready to take South Africans in confidence in the process that will unfold, and will continue to let the people of South Africa know where and at what stage of development of their withdrawal, of their children, of their troops, of their pride from the Eastern DRC. We are not cowing away, we are withdrawing systematically in a phased manner. That is what we are currently doing, and where there is a need, we will also take the media to the assembly area so that you can see what we are doing, and that will be part and parcel of our effort to let the people of South Africa know at what stage of the withdrawal we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the input from both the Minister and the Chief of the South African National Defence Force. I'm glad that the Chief has actually instructed us to consider taking you to the assembly area where possible, and that's going to be work in progress. But we take instructions, and that instruction will be implemented as such. And fortunately, the Chief has said it in public, so you'll hold us accountable. With that said, may I then first take the first three questions, and we will have three phases. The first phase, the second phase, and the third phase. May I take the first questions, and you know the routine, you know the regime, your name, your place where you're from, but not your number. We have your number. So I'll start in the front row here, as you're seated.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, audible.
My name is Dara Mafukwan from Newsweek Africa, and my question goes to General Mapanya. Just in terms of numbers, since the partial withdrawal, how many members how many members of the SANDF have returned this far? Just want a little bit of numbers there. And secondly, what then happens in the Eastern DRC specifically? Are you fully satisfied that there is peace and that your withdrawal of your troops is not characterized as a conceding defeat? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your name again?
Skara.
Skara. Your full name?
Yes.
Skara.
The journalist.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
A lady.
Good morning, it's Naomi Kobe here with ENCA. I think my question is also for Chief SANDF. Also with regards to clarity on when the first batch of troops will be expected back home, and I suppose how many troops will be undergoing this mission of arriving home? How many troops do we still need to see back home in the country? Also, will the SANDF be abandoning any equipment in the DRC, given the sensitivity of the mission? Also, how much is this costing the SANDF, this, I suppose, bringing back the troops back home? How much is that costing us? And then what lessons has the Army learned from the deployment of these troops in the DRC?
Thank you, Insi. Kaya.
Hi, good morning. It's Kylie Shakumalo here from SABC. So, Minister, you said the withdrawal is a result of agreement to give peace process a chance, but we've seen that, Rwanda and DRC, we saw the ministers going to Washington. So do you think that perhaps Africa is failing to address this issue, especially because for them to go to Washington, D.C.? So are we seeing Africa not really being able to lead this particular issue, especially because of the mantra of African solutions for the African problems? And just a second question around former President Kgalema Motlanthe as part of the SADC EAC facilitation mediation team, but we do understand that he has not been informed or even attended some briefing. Are you perhaps, fully acquainted with maybe just in terms of the way forward, in terms of him being well informed in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaya. I will ask, I will refer to the panel, and General Matwanya and the Minister will distribute the questions accordingly. General, sir. Unfortunately, General, you have to come here because there are no mics there.
Can I take the easy ones?
This one. Minister will respond first, followed by General Matwanya.
So I'll take the Mr. Kgalema one from the SABC. You note that this is a summit DRC mission led by a secretariat, its own secretariat. So the appointment, the information and the briefing of Kgalema is going to be done at that level, so we're not directly involved as a country because it is a SADC and East Africa matter. So personally, I would not know where they are until with the meeting they brief us, but I assume that they would have done that. Rwanda DRC, because it really is not about the fight in the DRC in particular, it's about, I think, dynamics in those regions, and for diplomatic reasons, I would like us to leave it at that so that we don't comment on other countries' activities, because that in a way is not directly linked to our mission in the DRC. But we still, and I think we all believe, because in the statement I did indicate that the current space we find ourselves has been the efforts of AU. So AU came in, it's the efforts also of East African Community and SADC. But also if you look at that panel that is now negotiating peace, it's really a broader panel. It's not SADC only, it's not East African Community only, but it's different countries also which contributed towards the peace negotiating team. So I do believe that there's still ongoing commitment to getting African solutions, African problems being solved locally. So I don't doubt that commitment. Thank you.
The beauty of command is that I have the right to delegate, and so there are two questions that were directed to me, which I will try and answer briefly, without getting into more details that will hamper or harm the safety of our troops. In terms of numbers, I will tell you that I said we had 13 trucks in the initial movement with 57 members that went as the advanced team to the assembly area in Tanzania. They have already arrived. What is quite difficult for me at the moment is to give you a breakdown of future activities, because that actually borders on the safety of our troops. So suffice to say, the initial team is currently in Chato. The rest of South Africans, the rest of SADC members will move out of Sake and Goma, and they will disperse from the assembly area which is in Tanzania. Now, the second question that was asked by, I think it was Kara or Michelle, I will just juggle around the two in terms of the movement and the repatriation. It's for both equipment and personnel. SADC is not leaving even a pin in the DRC. The engagement that we had with M23 during the period on the 28th when we went to Goma was to tell them that we are going to withdraw our personnel and equipment unconditionally. So that element was informed by the developments that were taking place. I want to couple the question and put it in one. That our withdrawal was informed by the decisions of the summit to say, listening to what is happening at the political space, there is an agreement that is being reached for the cessation of hostilities and a ceasefire. The reason why SADC decided on Sami DRC was primarily to say that there is an inclusive engagement that leads to peace. And if there is an inclusive engagement that brings the varying factors in this conflict, therefore, we conclude that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And the tunnel's end, we have already seen it, because we have seen that there is an agreement that had been signed. And if there is an agreement, and the chiefs of the defense forces were instructed by the leadership of both SADC and East African Community to say, go and engage the other side because they are the military personnel and they will understand you better. Get a commitment that they are going to be committed to the cessation of hostilities and they will abide by the ceasefire. So that in itself tells you that the political objective will have been reached, and therefore we will then have to stick to what the political decision is to say, let us give peace a chance, and then we will withdraw our forces. And we are proudly doing so because we are seeing that there is an element of stability that is being negotiated and mediation is continuing. We therefore say that SADC had understood that you mediate and negotiate not only with your friends. The critical part of negotiation is to speak to your enemy. And that is what is happening. The two contending parties are meeting, and therefore withdrawal is informed by these developments. So that is now the question that came from Skara and from Michelle. The next issue that I wanted to give to CJ Ops, but I thought maybe we will be giving too much, both in terms of numbers. We will update you as we move on. But I am debating with myself whether I should ask Chief Joint Ops to have a word on the current phases. I've given you the first part of it, and CJ Ops, I would like to give the people of South Africa at least an understanding that phase 1 is started, phase 2 is ongoing, and therefore how we are planning to go forward with the rest of the phases. CJ Ops. I don't know if there is anything except the lesson learned. Lesson learned primarily for each and every operation that we conduct. There is a debrief that we do. We are waiting for the commander to give us now the final report that will be inclusive of the withdrawal, so as to be able to finalize the debrief, and we will draw and derive a lesson learned from that debrief. There is a lot that we have learned in this operation, much as there is a lot that we have learned from the previous operations that we have conducted. Chief Joint Ops, if you can touch on the other simple or rather difficult ones that comes with numbers. But I would urge that that response must also be conscious of the security of our troops. And again, that we are part of SAMI DRC. So we are not going to single out the SANDF, although there is a part that was asked in terms of how much is it going to cost South Africa for the withdrawal. The withdrawal is being orchestrated by SADC, and the SADC had put a budget that speaks to the withdrawal. That budget is made out of the contributions that had been made by all SADC member states, not troop contributing countries. So that is the budget that is going to at least make it easier for the withdrawal as part of the deployment. CJ Ops. You.
Thank you very much, Chief, and we would like to invite Chief of Joint Operations, Lieutenant General Sangweni.
Minister and Chief of the National Defence Force, this is much more difficult than the overall presentation that you have shared with the people of South Africa. However, just shortly what I can say, the Chief of National Defence Force indicated that there was an advanced team that is now in the territory of Tanzania. In the ops environment, we classify Goma as the red zone, and then Tanzania as a green zone. So first element that moved on the 29th and arrived from Goma and arrived in URT, which is a green zone, on the 30th of April. I'm bringing this just so that all of us must understand our plans and estimates was that the distance from Goma to URT or to Tanzania territory is very short. According to we expected that a movement will be completed in 1 day. However, the roads that side and vehicles breaking down, they had to take 2 days from the 29th until the 30th at the assembly area. Thereafter, there is preparations that are undertaken in Goma to then have further projections in phases and in groupings from Goma up to Tanzania. Now, already we are handling it handling it differently because we thought one day we'll be able to achieve the objective of getting into the green zone. So our plans might now be affected in terms of when exactly we'll be able to finalize the movement. But there's quite a lot of work that is being done in the deployment area or the mission area, meaning Goma and Sake. Now, the chief did indicate in his briefing that the mode of movement when all elements are now in the green zone will be, for South Africa particularly, we'll have some which will move by sea, meaning at the port of Dar es Salaam, which will be much more quicker. The prime mission equipment to be put on board a vessel. Well, we all know we're not sure when then those vessels will be able to arrive in RSA to our dedicated point of the port of Durban. The equipment from the port of Durban will go to our MOP and DMOP area in Bloemfontein, as we always do with all deployments. Timings is quite impossible for us to say when. With the personnel, we are trying to move them as quickly as possible. That's why we undertook the mode of movement of personnel with their own luggage to be conducted by air. Again, from the green zone of URT, they'll take off and come back to South Africa in groupings as well. Again, currently we do not have the schedule which confirms when is the first flight taking off and arriving and when is the next one. What I can share with the media and South Africans is that there's a program of receiving specifically the personnel who will arrive much more earlier than the rest of the equipment to our MOP and DMOP area in Bloemfontein. And it's important that when they arrive, yes, there'll be some discomfort, that they'll have to remain or we keep them at the mobilization center, which we do expect that maybe the families will be unhappy or they might not understand the program of the soldiers that they arrive and then they undergo a process of DMOP, of demobilization, which primarily will then be lying in the hands of the Surgeon General because they are going to undergo extensive social demobilization with the psychologists as well as social workers to ensure that they are now in a good frame of mind. We are going to try to make it as short as possible, but the program will dictate. Important is that our soldiers, when they get home, they'll be at least be able to be normal. We are trying to disengage the part when they are in the combat era and then when they arrive at home. This is similar as we did with those who arrived who were injured. They underwent, I think, a 3-4 days process here in Pretoria, and then they were taken back to their home units, and the chiefs of service and division then they attend to them. It's very important that we all support and when we share or we speak with the families, make them understand that there will be a period where General Sangweni arrives from the deployment area, but he still has to undergo processes that are standard in military. So also the media, please do not put pressure on us and put pressure on the soldiers to say when are you going to get home. The soldiers will to follow this program. They understand it as part of our training. I reiterate, we are going to struggle to give you exact dates of arrivals, because we do not have the schedules, and how in between will the movement of the personnel by air. The movement by sea, we all know it will take long, and I don't think it needs quite a lot of, or it attracts a lot of attention. I believe I've covered it.
Thank you very much, Chief of Joint Operations, General Sangweni. Colleagues, I think that was a detailed report and feedback. I'm just going to check if there is any other hands that we did not see earlier, and we're going to give the second round to the gentleman in a cap there, and the gentleman on the phone there. I'm told you also want to, Michelle again.
Naomi, sorry. Naomi.
Oh, sorry, Naomi, my apologies. Do we have anybody online? Let's start with the people online. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. We have a set of questions from Noku Kanyam Tambo, Eyewitness News. Minister, in January, SANDF soldiers died. Has there been additional fatalities of SA soldiers since then? Will the troops return with an artillery, or will some equipment be abandoned? Next question. What conversations were had with Rwandan officials to ensure safe passage? Minister, do you consider the semi-DRC mission as having been successful overall? Is this the end of semi-DRC mission entirely, or is the retreat temporary? Or is this being assessed based on a situational basis? And how many soldiers are expected to return by the end of the withdrawal? And Minister, there were also peacekeepers deployed under MONUSCO. Are there any SANDF soldiers part of MONUSCO still deployed? If there are any, will they also be withdrawn? The last question, Chairperson, is from Sindiso Nkabati from the Gauteng Network. Minister, can you please provide more details on the security arrangements in place during the withdrawal process for the civilians as well in Goma, particularly in areas where M23 forces are present? That's all for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we then come back to the colleagues in the room? Kai?
Good morning, I'm Martin from Defence Web here. So I have a few questions. On funding in particular, I believe about 4.9 billion rand was allocated over the next 3 years to support the SAMI-DRC mission. So what is going to happen to that funding? Will it go back to Fiscus? Will it be transferred to the SANDF? And there was a lot of talk about logistical and other failures for the SAMI-DRC deployment. And a lot of political parties have been talking about increasing defence spending. The Deputy Minister mentioned a couple of months ago that defence budget might be increased to 1.5% of GDP. Are there any plans for that? And finally, in terms of the wounded, how many wounded soldiers came back from the DRC? Are there still any wounded soldiers in the DRC? And what is the status of the wounded at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. I think we'll pause here before we go to the last round so that we can allow the panelists to respond to these questions. Yeah? The easy ones for you.
I'll ask General Mapang and his team to answer the other questions which are really around details. The only one I really want to answer is around the budget and the fiscals. Normally in government, if money is unspent, it goes back to Treasury. You don't reallocate it amongst yourselves. So, as the General had said, the financing of semi-DRC comes from the 16 countries that make SADC. From there, when they've worked out the figures, they'll tell us what is supposed to be our contribution as a country based on the 16 countries' contributions, which are determined with a different formula. So we'll still get our figure from the SADC Secretariat. But that money was meant or assumed that we were going to be there for longer, because after we extended our stay in SADC, in the summit DRC last in December, we had requested extension for a year until, actually for 6 months to stay there, and then use the other 6 months to train the defense force of the DRC. So some of those activities, Summit DRC might decide that they want them to continue, but that money was assuming that we're going to be there for a year. So if we underspend, say for instance, out of the 3 billion, I didn't know that it was 4, it was 3. Out of the 3 billion, if we happen to spend 1, it's going to go back to fiscals. That's how it works. If it has to be reallocated, it's going to be another process, a budgetary process where request and a new budget to say we want it reallocated, and the Ministers' Committee on the Budget will have to approve if it's going to be reallocated along the new request. So it's not automatic that it will come to us. General, I'm going to ask you to really respond to conversations with DRC, with Rwanda, the non-verbal. So I think you'll just explain those details.
I will start off with the one in terms of how many soldiers died. Will we bring back all the troops? And the issue of the conversation with Rwanda in terms of the withdrawal of our members. I will start off with that one because the minister started off with it to say, let me start by answering that particular part. I think it's twofold. The first one is the note verbal that was written by SADC, indicating that because the reconnaissance team had identified that there are complications with regard to the fixing of Goma International Airport and the protocols that are involved in terms of the airspace, because Goma still remains part of the DRC, and the engagement between the DRC and M23 is the negotiation and mediation that takes place between the two contending parties. And therefore, the note verbal that was written by the SADC Secretariat to Rwanda was to, one, indicate that we will be using road movement to the assembly area, and that road movement will, in one way or another, because to go to Tanzania you must pass through Rwanda, and therefore Rwanda was informed in that note verbal that we will make use of the road thoroughfare to the assembly area. That is the one part. The second part that I conceived on the question was whether Africa is not engaged in trying to resolve African problems and come up with African solutions, where you have seen both DRC and Rwanda going to the US and other countries. I think that is a very unfair question to ask to the minister, because it involves the two countries, and therefore the two countries, the minister cannot speak on behalf of the two countries on matters pertaining to their territorial integrity and the negotiation. But in terms of Africa's involvement, the withdrawal from the Eastern DRC is not taking away our responsibility to continue to be part of the solution in peace building in DRC. So all the regional entities, SADC included, will continue to seek ways of peace building in the Eastern DRC. And that is the commitment that was made by the leadership of the regional bodies. So our withdrawal is not abandoning the people of DRC. Our withdrawal is a tactical move that allows peace and mediation to continue. That is the second part of that question. The issue of, do we see Summit DRC as a success? Earlier on, I indicated that the objective for the presence of Summit DRC in Eastern DRC was primarily to ensure that there is peace and stability. And where there is an effort to say that mediation and political engagement is leading to that objective, by implication, yes, indeed, we see Summit DRC as having contributed to that effort to ensure that there is an inclusive engagement that eventually is leading towards peace, because peace was our final objective. The end state is peace. How there are members of the South African National Defence Force. I just want to take the media and the people of South Africa in confidence to say that our presence in DRC is twofold. We are deployed as part of the United Nations under MONUSCO. And again, we are deployed in the DRC under SAMI DRC. So the element that is currently withdrawing is the element that is deployed under SADC in the mission that we term SADC mission in DRC. The element that is deployed under MONUSCO, which we still have a complement, it's remaining under the United Nations, and that decision will be informed by the resolutions of the United Nations Peace Security Council. So yes, indeed, we will continue to have our troops that are deployed under MONUSCO still in the DRC, and we will continue with the phased withdrawal of the SAMI DRC element. There is a question with regard to the safety of civilians, particularly in areas that are occupied by M23. The United Nations has that mission in DRC, which we are part of, to deal with the element of safeguarding of lives of the civilians. And there had been a symbiotic relationship in the mission of SAMI DRC in the protection of civilians as well. So the civilians will still be protected. As I say, MONUSCO is still on the ground. And the withdrawal of SAMI DRC is not the end to our involvement in peace building in the DRC. So we will continue to ensure that civilians are protected in one way or another, whether it's whilst we're still in MONUSCO or it's our engagement in the ensuing mediation process that will then see the Eastern DRC finally having a long-lasting peace, because that is what we would like to see at the end of the day. I think I've tried to answer all the questions. If there are any that I've left out, the coordinator will pull me back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, CJ Ops and Chief of Staff, and thank you to the service chiefs that are sitting with us. We're going to take the last round. I'll start with the lady who was supposed to come after Guy. Go ahead, ma'am.
My questions were handled in the last round.
Your questions have been dealt with. Thank you very much. Scott?
Thank you very much. Skara Mafokwane again from Newsroom Africa. I may have missed it, but pardon me, General. The number game now, back to it. Since, maybe let me rephrase it, including those who were injured, who have returned home, and since the partial withdrawal, maybe if we can get a total number of members who have returned or have left the DRC or are back in South Africa, just to be more accurate, so we don't avoid.
Can I just get clarity?
Yes, sir.
We are talking about the withdrawal, right? So are you suggesting that you want to know numbers before the actual withdrawal or during the withdrawal?
It was more inclusive, that because there were those who were injured and returned, but my question was more on since the withdrawal, how many members of the SANDF have are back in South Africa?
I see. I think Joint Ops did deal with that question, but I will ask the Chief again to just make a clarity on that. Thank you.
I think that is an open book exam, in that we have said to the South Africans that we repatriated 14 members that passed on, and we buried them in different areas where they come from. So hence I'm saying it's an open book exam, in that we made it visible. And then there are no any other casualties that we have suffered, because that was the second part of the question. In terms of those who were injured, we have repatriated all our injured, wounded in action, and those who were ill in the battlefield. We don't have any other injured personnel that is in the deployment area. So those are the two questions that I think required us to look at. In terms of statistics, we will give South Africans the overall picture of the operation in terms of your children in the entire mission. How many were injured? Because wounded in action is part of the confidential information that will be disclosed when and if necessary. If you come with the paia, I will simply tell you it's operational, and I will let you know when it is the appropriate time for the people to be taken in confidence. And sometimes it will only have to go to the committees in a closed session. I think it suffices to say, yes, indeed, the open book test exam, 14 were repatriated that had passed on, and yeah.
Scar, I hope you are clear now. I see you're smiling. Your smile says to me you are not sure, but I think you are clear. All right, the lady next to you.
One last question here from Naomi with ENCA. Just with regards to the 57 members who were deployed to assist in Tanzania in those redeployment efforts, can we maybe just get clarity in terms of whether these are SANDF members, Air Force members, on exactly who has been sent to assist troops in terms of the redeployment efforts? Thank you.
Can you repeat your question again?
So the chief had mentioned that 13 trucks and 57 members had been sent to assist in redeployment. I'd just like some clarity on exactly, are these Air Force members, are these soldiers, who has been sent to assist, are these Red Cross members, just some clarity on that.
I think you like the Air Force, don't you?
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of I'm going to take the last round, the last question, Guy.
Guy Martin from Defence Web here again. The situation in the DRC has raised a lot of questions about the capability of the military to deploy on overseas missions. Is the SANDF strong enough to deploy to places like DRC, Mozambique, or wherever else that crises might occur? Or is the SANDF going to sort of cut its cloth according to its budget and focus rather on domestic deployments? Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. That gives us that brings us to the final question and answer session. I will invite my panelists to take those questions before we close. General.
The first question is with regard to the 57 that went to the assembly area. Now, out of the 57, 30 were South Africans, and the rest from Tanzania and Malawi. This is the advanced team, and that is actually the number that I was comfortable to let you have, because it is an advanced team that is going to facilitate the arrival of the rest of the team, and the sequence and the numbers of the rest that now becomes a challenge because of security considerations. Troop movement is a sensitive matter. In terms of the SANDF capabilities, I have indicated during our previous engagement when we were talking about the state of the National Defence Force. You have got a defence force that is capable of carrying out at least 3 major missions at one given time. If pushed, I'm talking about major missions. You might have heard about the challenges that we might be having with regard to the equipment. That is now forward-looking, and currently we always believe that the Defence Force is an entity that do not only live on today. What you have today must define what you will be having 5-10 years down the line, and therefore when the command element of the Defence Force started to talk about the challenges of equipment, it was because we did an appreciation and said, what is it that we will need going into the future for the South African National Defence Force to remain relevant, to remain as a tool for the political aspiration to be role players in the region and in the continent. So you do have the Defence Force that is ready and capable. The challenges of equipment is what we are addressing. We have gone to the length of this discussion, and we have come up with a document that we decided to call it the Journey to Greatness, taking into consideration that there had been efforts that were made to try and understand what we have. So we took stock of all what we have, and then we had put it very clear in that document, which I think we will need to unpack it and let the people understand what is it that we're talking about, our journey to greatness, because greatness will be based on what South Africans will be capable of saying this is the type of the defense force that they would like to have. And therefore, when the Commander-in-Chief made a pronouncement that the defense budget will have to increase at least to a 1.5% of the GDP, the Commander-in-Chief made that decision having listened to what the military command have said in terms of the requirements for us to build into the future. As of today, if we are given an instruction, we will be able to go anywhere in the world where our political leadership takes us. If they instruct us to say, tomorrow you wake up, you go to the moon, we will try and find ways of getting to the moon. If the Commander-in-Chief says go to the sun, we'll say it's too hot. We will try and find ways of getting the attire and equipment that will take us to the sun. So we are having a capable defense force that is willing to carry out the obligations as required by the Constitution and the people of South Africa. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our briefing. May I take this opportunity first and foremost to thank yourselves for responding to our invitation, and also the engagement that you've afforded us. It's much appreciated. And I would also like to thank the Minister, Muteka, the Chief of the SANDF, Panya, Chief of Staff, General Ramanswana, CJ Ops, Lieutenant General Sangweni, Chief of the Army, Lieutenant John Bata, Chief of the Air Force, Lieutenant General Bambo, SG, Sergeant General, Lieutenant General Mapaha, Chief of Logistics, Admiral Mkonto, Chief of HR, Lieutenant General Sichongai, and the GOC Tactics HQ Joint Ops, General Tulari. Thank you very much, Chief and the Military Command. We've now come to the end of our engagement. And thank you very, very much, colleagues, for accepting our invitation. Thank you.